Okay, so now we're going to focus on how to basically use CSS to format links. So I'm just going to type navigation here, and it could be that I actually want to apply a heading 1 to it since I've set up my CSS, but you can see all of a sudden what that does, because at first I thought, oh, that's a good idea, but what it's done because it's so big is now it's shifted everything down. So now, oops, let's go back to the example. My scroller mouse wants to, you can see what it's done. So after thinking about that more, maybe I want to, but see, you see what happens with heading 2 is now I can't see it. And so for the example, we'll just use heading 3. But I would probably, actually, let's just go ahead and create this, and we will use heading 4. And so, and what I'm going to show is now, if I select this and we create a new one, this is going to be a way where whenever I use heading 4, it's just going to be using, even though I am redefining this tag, I'm doing it just for the case of when I want to format my left navigation heading. So in this case, I want it to be Arial. Maybe I still want it to be, well, 36 is too wide, so maybe I want to do an 18. I could, if I wanted that to be the color, I could do that. I could go ahead and change margin if I wanted to. I could add padding if I want to add padding throughout. So let's apply that and see what that looks like. Still, you can see it's not quite aligning up with the heading, and so if I wanted to, I could do this and play around with this till I get it just right. So that's closer where that top H and N are, it's really close. But I might also decide that, well, let's play with the font size and see what this looks like. Okay, so you can see that I spelled navigation wrong. That's loud and clear. So let's just hit. No, actually, it looks good. All right, and that's actually something with spelling I will point out that looked like an L to me. Is be aware that you do have up under commands, you have check spelling. So you can always do that, and you can check your spelling that way. Because sometimes I think we get caught up in developing the page, we forget about important things like spelling. So I'm going to do Shift Enter, and you can see that it's still keeping this tag. So I'm going to go to Split View just to drag that. I want to drag this closing tag right in front of this break. Okay, so here it is here, and the break by default, because it's is basically doesn't have, it has this default spacing. So, and that's fine for now. Oops. Put the mouse right here, and so we're going to call this page 1. I'm going to do Shift Enter, page 2, Shift Enter, page 3. Just as we're just going to build basic navigation. Now, something to always think about is either having strong or left alignment. In this case, I could select back on this H4, and I could play with alignment if I wanted to. So actually, I should be able to select CSS, and you can see that every now and then these things get a little funky. And so I'm going to actually save this. Okay, so I'm going to click on navigation over here. I'm going to go down to text align, and I'm going to we're going to do this as a right align. And then we're going to do the same thing as we build these out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add, I'm going to assume that I'm going to, even though I haven't created this file yet, I'm going to make that link page 1, this one page 2.html, this one page 3.html. Okay. And so now basically I can click on this link here and I can create a new tag. Now in this case I have a couple of options here. If I want to redefine all of the links that and have this style over here on the left be consistent with any time I create a link, I could do this. In this case, I'm just going to have this be left nav, A, master. Alright, that looks good. I'm going to hit OK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to still choose my, I don't have to keep doing my font family, but I'm doing this just to show you that you could be changing this if you want. I'm going to choose this to be 18, and I can hit apply and see if the size looks about right. And I can keep playing with this. Text direction, I'm going to say basically none, so I don't want it to be underlined. That looks good. Okay, just looking at a few more things. And I'm so used to doing this in code view, I have to remember where these things are. I'm going to text align right, apply it, and I'm going to play with my spacing now, or my white space, my padding. And so if you remember before, I did 10 pixels for everything, but I got rid of the top. So here I might choose, let's do 2 pixels for the top. And so I could play with that. That's still not quite what I want. And so, and you notice here, it looks like this padding bottom, I'm going to actually get to 0. And you can see all of a sudden that brought it nice and close. And so, just like that, I'm going to save all. And you can start seeing, when I preview this in Chrome, you can actually see it's actually not taking. Let's see what this looks like in our Explorer. And this is part of what using CSS happens, is you do things and it doesn't respond in all browsers the way that you think it does. And so sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and keep tinkering. Unfortunately, with CSS and with web development in general, a lot of times there's a million different ways to do things. So you can't let it get you down. You really just have to, accept it and keep pushing forward. Alright, so what I've basically decided, or as I start playing with this more, is rather than deal with the text align with this element and with this element, what I did was I clicked on my left nav and add text align, that is. So now let's save it and take a peek. Okay, so that's more what I wanted. So now let's continue with the links, and I'm going to show you next how we would use a class to accomplish the same type of thing. But I'm going to now, maybe I want to make the color of the links red. It doesn't really stand out real well, so let's see if we go with this color. And it gives me a little better. Let's save all and take a look. Okay, so that looks good. So now if I actually add another example, so the reason why I did it this way is now you'll notice that if I put this elsewhere, oops. And I believe that my property inspector looks a little cut off down here. Basically, I change my graphic hardware settings when I do this, because it's supposed to ensure that you can always see my mouse out. But you see how now my links are still blue in the body of my page. I could also go down and decide I want my footer links to be something different. So let's give an example here. Let's zoom in, because this is hard for me to see. I know it's going to be hard for you to see. So basically I'm just adding text here for a link that I'm going to call to my own website. And I would usually probably use a target into a blank page, but let's for now just leave this as is. So now I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to actually click on my plus sign, and I'm going to choose a class, and I'm going to call this footer link. And so now what I can do is I can choose what color I want this link to be. So maybe I want link to be this color, and maybe I don't want it underlined, and I could do things with the font as well. But now what I can do, if I highlight this, now that I've set up that class, I should be able to click CSS and apply. It's not letting me do it this way, so let's go to split view. Basically within this, I should be able to hit within this, hit class, enter, footer link, and then it applies the style. And so you set up a class and then you have to include it within the tag, and that's the way a class works. So let's save all. Let's go back to normal %, and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so I set up my links that way, and I set up a different link, a different color down here, and then I could, yet my body link, my default link is a totally different color. So that's the basic way that you can do links, by basically setting up, redefining a tag within a div, or in this case down here, by using a class. And so I could, for instance, if I go up to here, I could highlight this. And sometimes it will let you from this drop-down menu. It wasn't letting me before. Sometimes I can select on the class I created, footer link, and sometimes it won't. And so let's see if it actually applied that. I'm talking so much. And it did apply it to it, so it should actually make it the right color, but let's just check. And it has not. And sometimes what I'll do is, especially in Chrome, I can go to incognito view and it won't remember my history, and so with visited links, and it's still not. So I'd have to tinker with that some more, which is fine. But what I want to do now, as we're wrapping up this thing on links, is really talking about how to use CSS to play with basically how links interact from the rollover effects and other things. I like to sometimes simply display this the easiest way that I just always got in the habit of doing, and it's very lazy, is that I create a new file, and when you so I create a new file, HTML, and when I do that, if I just go up to modify and page properties, Dreamweaver has this basically built in where if I click on links CSS, I can set this up the way I want. So let's say I want it to be Arial. I can't remember what my left navigation was. We'll say 8 pixels. I'm going to choose a link color, and I will. I guess I should. Here, let's take a look, and so I can remember what color. So my links were FEC. All right. So I'm going to go Arial 18. We'll F. You can see that I have some really bad lazy habits that sometimes come out when I try to do a video like this. Okay, so I'm going to choose when it rolls over. Maybe I want it to be, I'll adjust this later, but this red, let's say, and then visited, maybe I want it to be, the darker color, and I'll adjust that, but we'll just choose a dark color right now. And maybe I want them only to show underline on rollover, so I hit OK. And then when I do this on a new page, I can see what it looks like here. And so it's really lazy, but I can always then take this, cut it, plop it into my CSS. So I'm going to go code view. Now, something to think about is that you have the ability to comment out things. So let's see which one of these. I don't even know which one allows you to comment these days. There it is, apply comment. So sometimes it's nice to apply a comment like this that says CSS links. And then what you can do is you can comment out when you're doing different things in your CSS. Now when you first get started with this might seem crazy, but when you start creating lots, your CSS starts having hundreds of lines of code, commenting out sometimes is very helpful so people can see what it is. So now what I can do, well, first let's just see what happens when I did that. Oops. See, it wants to save this page. So let's get rid of this. We just use that to be lazy. And really, sometimes you have references or other books that you can use to do this, but you'll notice that this link we can't see because it's already applied by default that new style to this. And so if I wanted to, I would have to change this. But for now, let's just jump into the CSS and let's see what we did. Alright, so now if I wanted to apply this same style to, for instance, just my navigation, I'm going to go up here and you see how I have this left nav. So if I copy this, I could put this in front of each one of these and have this just apply to my left nav. I don't tend to use active. I'm going to leave it here, but I don't tend to use that. And I don't always use visit, though sometimes visit is very helpful too. So now I'm going to actually just get rid of this one because I don't need it. Because it was fine the way I had it, but if I really want to kind of use the additional features, I needed to go beyond that. So I'm going to preview this and see, so you can see. So now what I've done is I use CSS to make it where when you mouse over it, you see an underline and you see a different color. And if I clicked on it, if I had that second page, let's actually just create it. So once, if I was really happy with this, then I could start creating my other pages. So let's just create this one called page1.html, and let's close that and go back to here and we'll preview it, and you'll see that that's basically the color. And you see the color wasn't really what I wanted, so I would actually go back to my CSS and basically I wanted more of a shade of something like this. So if I want to find the color that I want, I could basically start with that, hit this little color wheel and choose, I could go something darker if I wanted, something like that, let's say. And so I could hit OK. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to do an undo. So now one of the things that happens, it's good that I almost did this even though I didn't mean to, is undo doesn't always work the way it should and when it comes to CSS. So I'm going to actually select my color picker down here and bring it back that way. See if, alright, I was successful. So I'm going to save all, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fix this color. So I'm going to go to Code View. I'm going to go down to, and this is really CSS for my left nav link, so I should actually be very specific. But it was actually, so I'm not really using my active, so I'm going to get rid of that. My hover looked good. It was this visit that I didn't like, so I'm going to paste my new one in. I'm going to go to Design, save it, and preview. Okay, so now you can see this is what my visited, I've already visited page 1, so that's what it looks like. And so you could work on getting the colors right, going back to your color scheme, but I've basically showed you a couple ways of how you can format your links differently to have them using classes or adjusting your divs to have them show up in a different format, different text, different size, etc. So hope this helps. And basically when you move forward, and we'll create some more of these videos in the future, where if you add images, you might want to redefine the image tag where you adjust a certain padding and margin for all images, but then you might actually have, for instance, images in your navigation, and in that case you might want to set up a specific class that says whenever you have an image in your navigation, it applies different rules. So I hope this helps, and let us know if you have questions. Thanks.